right, let's look at some solutions or recommendations for matrix organizations. Again, if you haven't seen the introduction and the second video on challenges, I would encourage you to start there. The introduction covers some broad definitions and implications of what it means to be part of a matrix organization and how this is becoming more the case throughout our society. There are less and less examples of traditional organizations, more and more are matrix. And the second one on challenges is also important to see because you really can't appreciate the need for and the power of some of these solutions or recommendations I'm going to lay out for you unless you understand the inherent nature of the challenges or problems. But let's go ahead and jump in, and we should probably start with saying what the benefit is of a matrix organization. We've said what it is, but why is it so good? Maybe you've gotten it by inference, but let me just say it explicitly. Matrix organizations bring synergy and efficiency when excellent people from different fields team together. Synergy is 1 + 1 = 3. It's, when they work together, it's better than if they had worked apart. Picture two guys underneath a fruit tree and they're trying to pick as many oranges or anything else from the tree. They can only get what they can reach. But if one sits on the other's shoulders, they might be able to pick all of the fruit off of the tree. 1 + 1 = 3. There are many other examples of that. But in any matrix organization, that's what happens. You have people who have an expertise in sports, and you have people who have an expertise in education, people who have expertise in funding, in science and technology, and relationships, and many other things. And depending on the nature of the organic group, the group that you're primarily a member of, they matrix with others who have expertise in that field that they could never do as well in if they tried to do it themselves. Now, it's funny to watch a movie where a guy's got 27 PhDs and he lives to be 1,000 years old and he's done all those things, burned the t-shirt. But that's just not reality. The reality is we need to work with others or we're going to have less quality product of whatever it is if we try to do it all ourselves. So, matrix organizations must recognize, leverage, and advertise advantages of the multiple bosses. We need to talk to our people. Whether that's talking to your kids, talking to your subordinate managers, talking to, as a colonel or sergeant major, talking to your majors and your captains and your staff sergeants under you, to let them know it's not weakness to report to these other people and have there be a level of accountability and teamwork. It's synergy, it's wisdom. 1 + 1 = 3, because the people who are external to our organic group have a lot to bring to the table, and it's a win-win when we team with them. One way to do this is leaders working with these multiple bosses to invite lateral power struggles resulting in excellence. Now, it might sound counterintuitive to invite a power struggle, but if you've got, in your family, you've got two different coaches that both want your kids' time, or in your commercial business, you've got two different vendors who want to sell you something or advertise something. If you put them on a even playing field in terms of your attention to them, validating the goodness of what they bring, that is going to entice them to be as good as they can be, so that you might choose one or the other, or you might give your attention first to this one, or you might give greater money or time to that one. If you invite a healthy power struggle, it can bring out the best in people. Just like playing somebody in a sport who's slightly better than you, it brings out the best in you. Same thing for those external to us. If we can invite that power struggle, not saying tease them, not saying provoke them, but let them know in the presence of each other that you value them both and that you have limited time, limited energy, limited materials. Let that bring out of them a desire to be their very best, so that you might give more of your limited resources to them. And that often works itself out. Leaders who delegate to multiple bosses gain freedom to focus more deeply in their areas. So if I'm not trying to do everything myself, but I can entrust the personnel issues to the personnel guy and the funding issues, the external funding outside of my organization, to that guy, and to the requirements person, guy or gal, their level of expertise and their requirements, that's a win-win for everybody, because now I can focus on what is just my responsibility. As a father, I can delegate some things to my wife, the mother. I can delegate some things to my kids. But there are some things that only I can do, because only I am the father. I have some responsibilities there. Same thing for any type of group. Some things we can delegate, and when we can do that with discretion and trust and realism and wisdom, then that frees us to focus on the things that only we can do. Leaders listening to multiple bosses also gain more accurate details and the bigger picture. When I'm not just telling them what I want from them, but listening to what they need from me, then I'm immediately more informed, because they know much more about their areas than I do. My kids' teachers know more about their education than I do. My kids' band directors know more about their musicality than I do, although I hear a lot of practice in the house. Vendors outside of your business know more about their product or their services than you do. It's a win-win when we listen and entrust those things to them. We get more detailed, accurate information, and we get the bigger picture, because everybody brings their part to the table. Leaders trusting multiple bosses can make major complex decisions more quickly. This follows from the previous things we've said. If I know that I'm getting good information because I'm listening to and working with people who know their stuff, they're outside of my organic group, it's easier for me to make a decision than if I had to research all that myself or do all the things that they do as part of their group. It enables me to move forward with confidence because I'm working with good people who are experts in their field. And leaders maintaining ties with these multiple bosses encourage balanced interests in the group. So my group, whether that be a family of 6 or a business of 1,000 or a military organization of 15,000, it's impossible for me to maintain balance, because there's no way I could look at every detail. Even in a family of 6, I can't know all of the emotions that are going on. Some things are held inside. I can't deal with all of the school things. I can't deal with all of the bills. I can't do everything myself. I don't know how some single parents make it, and many single parents will tell you that they struggle. And so I need to maintain relationship with those external bosses. Trust, respect, open communication, understanding, give and take, because the relationship facilitates the matrix. The function of the products and the processes and services and all that is important, but none of that happens well if the relationships are not good. And these specific advantages imply some specific recommendations for leaders. Leaders need to clarify that matrix organizations are group efforts, but they are not democracies. There is one boss with a capital B. That's important, because especially if the subordinate bosses or managers and those external to the group see the big boss giving deference to some other people about requirements or products or services or schedules or time or anything else, they could misunderstand that to mean they're not in charge. They are in charge. And whenever they give deference, meaning they're going to give more attention and clout and limited resources to this person instead of that person in this moment for this decision, that could like they're giving up leadership, but they're not. It's their decision to do it or not and how to do it. So we need to remind our people that that there is one father over the family, or there is one colonel over this brigade, or there is one CEO over this organization, especially when they see those many bosses to whom they report. Sometimes some people will be more vocal, others will have more money or a different title, but in the organic group, there is only one boss, and that's whoever is at the top for primary authority. Leaders also need to plan those limited resources that are shared and fluid around those that are shared and set. We've already addressed this in earlier videos. I won't go into it a whole lot again, except to just say, look at whatever cannot be changed, those things that are central to the mission of the group and are shared outside, whether that be a point in time for a meeting, some equipment, some infrastructure, a base of information or anything else. If it's shared and really can't be changed for different reasons, you got to plan things around that. Promote comparable power among internal and external bosses for synergy. I mentioned this earlier too. Not just to build good relationships with them, but to give them what they need in terms of information and products and processes and time and other things to build up their power. Because if you're enabling them, they're going to be able in turn to enable you. It's a give and take. We can't just receive from them. We have to give what builds their function and their influence. Remember we talked, or interest. Remember we talked about function and interest being two aspects of power in a previous video. Leaders need to invest extra time in weaker internal and external areas and less in stronger areas. If an area is going well, we don't need to necessarily take time in it and hang out in that area and just feel good about it and give praises to those people. That might be appropriate every once in a while. We really need to give more of our time and attention and limited resources to those that are not doing well. Entrust the subordinate managers, whoever that is, with those areas that are going well. Give more of your attention to the weaker area. Now that's going to be hard. That means that you're always necessarily problem focused. But part of the beauty of a matrix is you've got good people working under you and with you, and you can leave those strong areas to focus on the areas that are doing less well. That's not as glorious. That's not as rewarding. That's not as immediately productive, but it's where we need to be for long-term growth. Leaders need to remind the bosses that exclusive wins in their area excludes others in the group. Think about your organic group and people who are matrix outside. In those subgroups, if the subordinate manager, first line supervisor, whether that's a parent or whomever, if they always focus just on their area, they're not working with others, and the matrix as a whole does not work well. So encourage your people to think broadly. Who touches their area? Who do they have to work with? Who depends on them? On whom do they depend? So they're not looking at exclusive wins. They're thinking about the big organization all the time. Leaders need to value bosses' skills to matrix, meaning to work the matrix or to connect with others, over more focused skills, knowledge, or experience. Now, skills, knowledge, and experience is important, but in a matrix, what's most important is the manager's ability to matrix, meaning to connect. This three-dimensional reaching to this person outside the organization, this person within the organization, the boss above them, somebody else outside the organization. Those are the ones that you really need in a matrix to make it work. Because anybody can focus just in their narrow area of skill, knowledge, and experience. Not everybody has the confidence and flexibility to work with others laterally, above them, and below them outside of their area. That takes a unique confidence and flexibility. It's a different skill set, sometimes a different personality. So not everybody can work in that way, and we need to value that type of person. Just because somebody has done well in their area doesn't mean that they can become a senior manager in a matrix. They might have reached what I think is the Peter principle, where they've hit the ceiling of their success and now they're beginning to fail because all the things that brought them to that level is a completely different requirement, expectation than the matrix beyond them. Leaders need to train, support, and promote internal bosses who are synergistic with others. Now, that's a different way of saying what I just did, but the converse of that is we need to be willing to confront, discipline, and consider replacing those who are not being synergistic. We can't leave somebody in a position that requires them to matrix, to reach beyond the organic group and within, subordinately, and the boss, working as an octopus. We can't leave them there if they're failing and unwilling or unable to change. Leaders need to advertise specific successes that could only be accomplished as a matrix. Every time something happens that is synergistic from outside the organic group, working with your group, that is done well, tell the group about that. Tell them individually, tell them publicly, tell them repeatedly, tell them exactly how it happened that required people in the organization and outside, because when they see what right looks like, they'll be more likely to do it again and more able to do it again because they heard you articulate how the matrix worked in a concrete example. And lastly, leaders need to thank and reward internal and external bosses for their specific contributions. Now, I just gave the example of talking about specific successes. Thanking and rewarding them is something different. Advertising is just you speaking, and thanking can just be speaking. But there are different rewards that you can give, and there's different ways that we reward according to whether that's a family or a business or a government. But think about what is it that your people would appreciate that they could look at that or reflect on that and say, my boss appreciates this type of contribution to the group, and I want to do that again. So it's a tangible way of rewarding their effort within the matrix. Hope this has been of some help. Matrix organizations are more and more replete in our society, and so it behooves us to learn about them, what they mean, the challenges, and some ways to make them go better. And I hope you found this helpful. See you next time as we look at a completely different series, and I hope you'll join us then.